Hey everybody, welcome to The Bottom Line. I'm Michael Noland, and tonight we're going to be covering Jethro Tull's brand new album, Rök Flöte. Rök Flute. All right, so when you talk about Jethro Tull, you've got to talk about Ian Anderson, right? He's their primary songwriter. He's the person who comes up with the material to begin with, and he has provided us with some very peering looks into our very own society as it has existed at that time, even prophesying into the near future. What do I mean by that? Of course, I'm talking about Aqualung, the whole album based on a homeless person who once came from an affluent family. Now, not only did that album speak to a growing concern of mental illness and people living on the streets at the time of its release, but it also served as an almost prophetic statement to the world we live in, especially today. And that gets us right to this album and its entire concept, okay? Now, in recent interviews, Ian Anderson has stated that too often we throw the baby out with the bathwater when we're talking about either former ways of life or former heroes who, due to changing mores, are now seen in a less favorable light. You see, it's the first word that's key to this album, rock. It's not spelled R-O-C-K, it's spelled R-O-K with an almost Motley Crue flavor to it. But I'll forgive Ian, he's a wonderful writer. But that word isn't necessarily about rock and roll, although we get rock and roll on this album. That word, rather, is a portion of the old word Ragnarok. And of course, that portion of that word alludes to course or direction or even destiny. So now we get an idea of where he's coming from. He further explains that he was hesitant to write about Norse mythology in any fashion, mainly because of how so many heavy metal bands have done so, extolling the virtues of Vikings, all right? And he doesn't like that because he has always seen them, and quite rightfully so, as invaders, and how they justified their invading, their raping, their pillaging by their very gods. But at the same time, he did not want to cut down that whole culture or the whole mythology. Rather, he wanted to use that mythology to make a point on this brand new album. You see, he wanted to take a look at that time in human history and how humans often take their belief in their own spiritual ideologies, their own religions, their own gods, and how they almost use those gods as an excuse for some very bad behavior. He even said that he took a while to even get the courage to even approach writing about this subject. So in the end, he wanted to go one step further than a lot of the metal bands have done regarding Vikings and the imagery involved around that and their gods. In other words, he wanted to make it a learning experience. Does he accomplish that on this album? Well, this album is due out in less than 24 hours, but we do have 3 songs to look at. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the 3 pre-released tunes, and then after the album is out, give me time to reflect on it and everything, and I'll conclude this video with a part 2 covering all the rest of the material on this album. All right, so the first cut we're going to cover is Ginnungagap or Ginnungagap. I've heard it pronounced both ways. And of course, the word comes from Norse mythology. It is the primordial nothingness that existed prior to the creation of human beings. As far as lyrics is concerned, oh man, he's got this covered right with the very first lyrics. I love these lyrics, all right? Take a look at this. This first and elemental flesh, both man and woman, falls awake. Oh, I love that. We've heard the term fall asleep but never falls awake. I love the whole idea. In other words, from nothingness to somethingness happening. Why? Because there were gods that made it happen. And when that happens, well, the things they made, in other words, man and woman, must be truly set to accomplish some very great things. How is the music? As fresh as anything that Jethro Tull has ever offered. Ian Anderson's flute is on fire on this song. The notes are dark and ominous, telling us that don't just take the words, because the words often come from the point of view of the Vikings, the Norsemen themselves, that they shall traverse, they shall almost rape and pillage because they were, again, destined. It was their course, all right? It was their direction to take, a God-given direction. And at only 3 minutes and 50 seconds, very short song here. Matter of fact, most of these songs on this album are 4 minutes and 58 seconds or shorter. Okay, so he gets right to the point with each and every one of these songs, or at least so far on the ones that I've heard. All right, so next track up, Hammer on Hammer. You know what Ian Anderson has talked about? He talks about Vlad the Bad on this, and the whole song starts up with a question from just such a person. Was there a time I was Jupiter? And in interviews, Ian Anderson has said that this song was inspired by famous leaders who were short of stature, who had something to prove. You know, the little man syndrome, right? Now, this track, as well as the track I just mentioned to start off the video, are both instrumentally sound. I mean, Ian Anderson on the flute is as good as he's ever been. The whole band sounds hot. The guitar work, the electric guitar work especially, is quite good, although not as upfront and maybe not quite as creative as we've seen with Martin Barre in the past. But Joe Parrish, as a guitarist, has no one to apologize to. You know, this guy grew up loving and was a fan of Iron Maiden. So he's got that heavy rock influence, and it shows clearly, especially on these 3 tracks we're covering tonight. All right, so that leads us to the 13th and concluding track for the album. Again, we'll get into the full album in a later video, but it's called The Navigators, and it comes with a single edit, so evidently this is going to be a single. This song has a slightly different feel than the last 2, but sit right next to them quite comfortably as far as I'm concerned. There's a broader, more expansive sound to this one. There's a breadth to the music on this one. I love this track, along with several positive reviews from this album by those who have had early access to listen to it and put out their reviews just prior to it coming out. I'm kind of excited for this one. It's been a while since Jethro Tull actually had material this strong, in my opinion. All right, so I hope you enjoyed tonight's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. That helps the YouTube algorithm help out with channel growth and all of that. And if you're one of my many viewers who have not subscribed to the channel as of yet, please consider doing so. It is so easy. All you have to do is hit that subscribe to the tribe button, then tap that top bell icon, and you'll be notified of all my future videos. Amazing how that works. All right, I'm Michael Nolan. This is The Bottom Line, or at least how I see it. And together, folks, especially in the comments, we are the tribe, and I'll see you in my next video.